Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic University podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Canton III, and we are continuing our Road to Doomsday. I can't even call it a miniseries anymore. It's a full blown out extravaganza. It's going to go approximately 2 years before Avengers Doomsday, which, by the way, a teaser is coming for this movie pretty soon. Whether it's this week or next, I don't know, but we'll find a way to be all over it somehow. But we're also all over patreon.com/MC University Pod. You can get our bonus content such as Batman Forever, the wonderful podcast that myself, Jake, and Rod did on that wonderful movie, that funny ass movie. You can check that out. And by the way, I haven't said this when I've plugged our Patreon, but I realize in the years that we've had this Patreon, we are now at the point that we have the Batman we're going to be done with the Batman Burton Schumacher franchise. We got the Mission Impossible franchise. We got the Bad Boys franchise. The Toby and Andrew Spider-Man. Am I missing anything else?
Yes, you're missing the piece de resistance.
The Fast and the Furious, the entire. So like,
the best one we ever did.
So if you're listening and you're wondering like, oh, do I really want to get involved with this Patreon? For $3, you get that entire backlog of.
I don't know.
That.
I think off the top of my head, it's probably at this point under. You're probably getting, if you buy it with the backlog, you're probably getting every episode for like 5 cents or less, because we have like 200 episodes on Patreon. So
yeah, so it's a decent amount of stuff at this point, and that's not including some of the extra stuff that we've done or Jake has done with the Daddy's Pod and stuff like that, other movies that we've talked about and stuff like that. So I'd say with that plus the Discord, I'm just, as in terms of me selling it, I think this is pretty damn good. So like if you're thinking about it for the holidays and you're on the holiday break and you want to check that out, please feel free to do so. And then of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And with that being said, let me introduce the super producer, Jake Christie. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to have this panel again. I'm excited to be warm and inside because it's really cold outside today. AC, I know you know, but man, this was the first day where I'm like, oof.
I know it's been a time, holiday season, but the grind continues.
You get the tips. That's the thing about a mailman. Whew.
Salute to the customers. The customers are bringing it so far. I appreciate each and every one of you. We do have a guest for this episode. Our pal Hunter Radesi back in the building. How are you doing, my friend? How are you feeling?
I am great. I personally, as a northerner, I personally love the cold. It makes me feel at home. So I'm enjoying that it's starting to feel like the holiday season, getting ready to go back up and visit home soon. So I'm in a good mood.
Wonderful. And what we are discussing this evening, we're going to talk about the Young Avengers or Champions. It depends on depends on what you hear. Because either they're going to do a series and call it Champions, or we're going to have a couple of them show up here in Doomsday. We're going to have a couple of them show up in Secret Wars, or we're going to have the whole shebang at some point. We don't know, but I think for the purposes of this episode, we are going to try and make our way through every single nook and cranny as far as what we might want to see from these characters or what this team could look like. So, Hunter, I will start with you with this question. So, if we go back to 2021 and we think about like the way that this, I feel like they wanted to construct this when we first saw Eli Bradley and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and maybe like a little hint by just showing Kid Loki and Loki for a second. And then, of course, obviously we get Kate Bishop, Kamala Khan, America Chavez, Billy, a.k.a. Wiccan. And, I could even, de facto kind of maybe include Riri Williams in there. Maybe we'll see. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then, of course, Cassie from Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. What do you think, in your opinion, as far as what you would like to see this iteration of the team look like? How are you feeling about a potential Young Avengers vehicle? I'm going to keep the Doomsday to the side for the moment. Just Young Avengers on its own. How do you feel about that kind of setting up on its own?
I love a lot of those characters that you just listed. I think a lot of those characters are very well cast. I think they're very likable. I think a lot of them you know, in my opinion, I think a lot of them did have fairly strong introductions. I mean, it varies in terms of strength, but all in all, I think a lot of the elements are there. I think I just don't know like how at this point in the MCU, like where and when an independent like Young Avengers vehicle would happen.
Right.
You know, in a way where you can even still call them the Young Avengers. Like I know you mentioned Champions earlier. At a certain point, you're gonna just have to call them that because you know
That's the
they're
name.
not
No.
gonna be.
That's the name that's
Question.
just been out there.
Question:
Yeah.
If they do Champions, can the theme song be Ron Artest's song? They say we warriors. Sorry, that was just racing. Hands high for the
Yeah,
champions.
it's funny you say like going back to 2021. You know, I think that at that point in time, I remember being so convinced that they were going to kind of go almost use like Disney Plus as for the Young Avengers,
Same note
as
too.
like Marvel Television was using Netflix for the Defenders,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe not necessarily in a way where you know they weren't getting like their own. We weren't getting like you know Eli Bradley like the TV show, but we were getting like Eli Bradley kind of introduced in a show that also had Power Broker on Disney Plus. We were getting you know Wiccan and Speed at that point in time, you know, kind of introduced together in a TV show that was about Scarlet Witch and Vision. And I remember feeling really confident that there was going to be some sort of path where they were making these Disney Plus shows for existing characters that they felt people would tune in for, where they would kind of plant the like young Avenger version of each of those characters in those shows, with some exceptions, you know, like Hawkeye being a more obvious, like Kate Bishop's a little bit older. That story amalgamates really well with like a Clint Barton solo story. But I thought for sure we were gonna do some sort of build up in that way, and then their whole talk of like yeah, you know, the TV shows are going to prove to be vital for your movie watching experience down the line in the MCU
Yeah.
would result in some sort of like Young Avengers movie where it's like, yeah, and then if you watched all of these shows, then you kind of recognize these characters when we drop this movie in theaters or some sort of like Disney Plus exclusive experience. I remember feeling like that was maybe a path they would go down that felt really clear cut. I mean, you know, say what you will about the Netflix shows, but that view, if you're not like a diehard fan and you're just someone kind of casually watching that, you know, it works for the movies for a reason. That idea of like we're going to introduce each character in their own project and kind of build towards this idea of them all teaming up makes a lot of sense. And I think it was something that was easy for people to follow, and I just thought that's what they were doing. And then obviously that's not what happened, and it got way more convoluted. And I mean, I think there are pros and cons to that. I mean, the cons of it being the fact that it is really convoluted and I have no idea how they're going to do it, and now it feels, you know, kind of messy in its own way. But the pros of that are that, like, I don't know. I think because it has been delayed, there are other characters who are maybe not
Yeah.
traditionally associated as being a member of that group that, for MCU purposes, you could throw in there. Like, you know, if it is going to be champions and they're a little bit older, now enough time has passed where it's like, great, I like Riri Williams a lot. If you want to throw her in there,
Yeah.
now you have a chance to do that in a way that you maybe wouldn't have been able to do in that original plan.
Mhm.
You know, even shows like Marvel Zombies, you know, hint towards those sort of
Yeah.
team ups and show the chemistry that those characters could have. So I think that they've proven that people like a lot of these characters and that a lot of these characters can have chemistry. But I just, you know, I feel like there was a clear path in some way, shape, or form that didn't happen. And now I feel like I'm stuck in this kind of Young Avengers purgatory where these characters exist and they keep teasing every chance they get that they're going to team up and become best friends.
Yeah.
And then it kind of like doesn't happen. And it does feel like the only place that that could happen would be, you know, Doomsday or Secret Wars. But again, and again, I don't know, you know, Marvel has handled large amounts of characters very well before, but it does sort of feel like, okay, can they now do some sort of Young Avengers team up in that movie on top of the other existing Avengers teams without it feeling like too much is going on and really giving that team up, you know, its due? That is where I'm sort of start to be afraid now of doing it there. But who's to say?
This interests me so much because of what you just said as far as the whole idea of, oh, okay, so we have these other event, like for instance, just to put Avengers Doomsday back in the focus here. So you have the Avengers, you have the X-Men, you have kind of like, I guess, this multiverse crew that the Loki verse, I should say, like the people who are involved
Mhm.
with that, the Sylvies and the rest of those folks, and whatever they decide to do with that. So where does where do the Young Avengers fit in something like that? And I go back to the Marvels and the Kate and Kamala kind of powwow and where they can take that. You mentioned a great portion about Riri Williams. Just to give you some context, and Jake, I'll get to you in a second. Just to give some context, so Charles Murphy was on with us last week, and by the way, check that episode out. Very detailed, a lot of good nuggets on the MCU and stuff like that. But specifically with the Young Avengers, there was he said when Kang Dynasty was a thing, the Young Avengers were a part of that in defeating a different version of Kang back then. And I'm like, damn, I would have liked to see that. That would have been cool. So I kind of wonder where this all could potentially go if they have the right mindset for it. And it's just one of those things where I wouldn't say I don't trust them, but I just would say, like, at this point, it seems like there's so many things going on presently, and they're also, you get the sense that they also have their eyes like beyond and X-Men and this and that, where I think where they might have missed the boat, and they might have, maybe, we'll see. Where they might have missed the boat with Young Avengers was this spot in from the 2022 to 2024 time where you could have had these characters come together, and whether you decided to do a miniseries, movie, you mentioned the Defenders. I thought that was a great callback. And you could have done something like that, and I think it would have popped with people. Especially you put Kamala Khan and Kate Bishop in the front and center of everything. That's kind of where you could cook with that. But go ahead.
I was gonna say that exactly that. I feel as though I know it's been talked about a lot on this podcast, so I won't, I'm not going to get into it that much. But this idea that after Endgame, Phase 4 was really messy. There was like a lot going on. It felt like there wasn't a clear vision. But that couple years of Phase 4 did feel like a really good opportunity to, like, if you want to continue with that format of like every phase builds up to some sort of team up, to have Phase 4 be like the Young Avengers phase where you can do these projects like WandaVision or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, maybe better quality for some of those projects, but like, continue the stories of these pre-Endgame characters while also building up to this Young Avengers team, have that sort of be the finale, and then lead into your next, like, now we're setting up to, Kang Dynasty or Doomsday or whatever the case may be.
Jake, how do you view this franchise?
So I think the thing for me is everything you're saying is right. Every single thing you guys have said has been correct. And I also think if they just wanted to be like, hey, these are just characters that people like, they're all vaguely young, let's just do a team up story with them and make it contrived, who cares? I think that would have been fine. Like, I think that because these characters are not on screen as much as comic book characters are on pages, I just don't think you need to worry nearly as much about how these characters fit in with each other. Just come up with a story that they'll all come together. Like, it's like, I think that I think a problem they ultimately had was that I think that they were probably thinking about doing this as a movie or something like that. Or they're setting these characters up to eventually be in movies.
Yes.
And as these shows went on, these shows were not sustaining the audiences needed to port these characters over to movies without like a big concerted push, right? Like Riri Williams, great character. If she's like the third build in a Young Avengers movie, I think that that's probably a problem. People didn't watch Ironheart, let's be honest. And I liked Ironheart a lot. So I think the problem ultimately is that it would work as a Defenders level miniseries on Disney Plus, but I just don't think that there's the infrastructure or the want, and frankly, probably not the contractual ability to have these people all come back. Like, I just don't know how you're going to get all these people who were previously leads of series to be like fifth fiddle in a Disney Plus series, but especially because these series, unlike the Netflix series, are wild productions. Like, I think it would just be very, very hard to get, Haley Steinfeld, Dominic Thorne, Catherine Newton, Iman Vellani will do anything, but like on set for 7 months. Like, I think that there's logistically, it's just really hard you can't justify doing it as a TV show from a logistics standpoint, but from a narrative standpoint, it absolutely should be one, because there is just too much shit going on in the movies. There is no space for it. Real, like, I'm someone who thinks that, they can squeeze stuff in, but I actually agree that there hasn't been, since all these characters got laid on the board, maybe you could have done it right after Hawkeye, if you were to like abridge it and make it, or like maybe right after Miss Marvel, you have Miss Marvel, Hawkeye, a couple other characters, Riri Williams, but like, there's not a great spot for it, except there would be as a series in like early 2024. Like that would have been where it would have worked. But I think there just is not the ability to do it. And I think as far as like the Young Avengers thing is concerned, I do think that if they ever decide to go back to it, I do think they need to call it Champions, because like I actually do think that
Yeah.
online jokes about how old all the characters are will actually sink it. Like I think, like we joke about it, but I think that actually will very much be like a. I think that would it just you don't ever want the jokes about your movie or TV show to be to be in truth with what people think about it. Like the reason why It's Morbin Time destroyed Morbius is because people thought the movie was silly already, right? Like you can make a joke, like
Yeah.
people make a lot of jokes about the few small beers moment in One Battle After Another. That's not making, because that's in joking with the movie. But if they're to call it a straight faced Young Avengers after Haley Steinfeld is 30 and married to the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, like I think it would just be much harder to sell that. It reminds me a lot of, and this is such a Jake tangent, there's a big meme in political circles where in 2010, a bunch of Republicans wrote a book called Young Guns. It was Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, and Eric Cantor. And I think that they were 40, 45, and 47 at the time. And it was Young Guns, a new generation of conservative leadership. That's what calling I mean, like, they're not young anymore. About Young Guns, it's a great meme. It makes me laugh every time I look at it, because truly Kevin McCarthy has fully white hair on the cover, and it's Young Guns, a new generation of conservative leaders. Anyway, it's great stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I also feel like at this point, at least to me as a viewer, I can't even really tell who Marvel would want to fully be on that team. Is the other thing. Like there's not necessarily a clear like to me there's such a mysterious case around, I mentioned him before, Eli Bradley, right? It's like they introduced this character, and during a time when we as audience, I mean, now that goodwill has kind of gone away a little bit, but at a time when we were like, Marvel doesn't introduce these characters unless there's some sort of reason, right? And I think that we saw Eli Bradley, we got excited about that, and then you have an opportunity. Like Marvel is, on one hand, they're still teasing this like Young Avengers Champions team up. But on the other hand, you have a perfect opportunity in this fourth Captain America movie, which features, Patriot really heavily in this major role, to then set up this idea that his grandson, or whatever the relation is in the MCU, I don't remember if they kept it the same, but his grandson would then, who exists in a world where Power Broker exists, would then have some sort of legacy after this, where he kind of ends up with these similar powers and he has to deal with that. Like that's, to me, that is a very interesting storyline. It has the potential to be a very interesting storyline. That's easy. They've already set, just spike it. But then they don't even, that character doesn't even show up in that movie. And then when they ask Nate Moore, the producer, also Survivor contestant Nate Moore, that, yeah, it's true, I'm watching the current season, but they ask him like, why was he not in that movie? And he's like, well, we just had a lot going on and we had to cut something. And it's like,
well, they were cutting all right.
Yeah, and it's like, well, if that's the thing you cut, then that's telling me that you actually don't really have plans for that character that were shown enough, right? So now I'm like, okay, so now I feel like maybe we never see him again, or like I don't know, right? So now I'm getting this feeling of I have no idea who you guys, if this is still a wrinkle in your mind, like who do you even want to be on this team?
Okay, I think the answer would be I think that as much as I hate to cut Eli Bradley, because that's an interesting character to do, I think if the actor has not had single card billing in a movie or TV show, they can't be in there. They can't. We've spent too much time. Like, I'm sorry, we just don't have time to do that. And
they missed the boat on that one.
Yeah, like Eli Bradley, like maybe at some point but like the fact is Marvel has too many characters that actually were important in the things that they're in that we've not gone back to. But yeah, like I think that like, because they don't need to be the main character, like as much as I don't love her performance in Quantumania, like Cassie Lang is an important enough character. Catherine Newton has single card billing, but like I don't. Eli Bradley got like also starring in the end credits. He's not big.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to look at it right now, okay, so we have Kate and Kamala obviously front and center. Billy, I think, is a perfect like third, and then you go Cassie, then you go America. And then you go probably Tommy. And I think the Vision show, I think, is going to, if anything, it feels like, just to me, the Vision show probably is like the last angle needed to push that part forward because once you bring Tommy into the fold, you kind of have the full roster there. And whether they
Right.
decide to, I'm really curious as to when they release that show, because Doomsday obviously is in December, and a lot of the talk has been the Vision show is more of a setup for Secret Wars type deal. So if that's the case, then you could make the semi-logical leap that Tommy being in the show, Billy looking for him. I'm sure at some point those two will come into contact, and then you get the Kate and Kamala of it all.
Yeah.
I do it. Just my personal opinion. I do think one or both of those two characters will be in Doomsday in some type of form.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
you get those two, and then Cassie too. Cassie's got to be in that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
a good lineup. I mean, if the success of Radiohead has showed anything, it's having two brothers with very different energies on the same team can make really successful stuff. So I think that, I mean, I think I think everyone you named is exactly right. Did you say Riri? I think Riri can be in there just because.
Yeah,
don't know.
Riri's. I'll say this, Jake, before you go.
Yeah.
I think the Riri Williams arc and her story kind of is the thing that fits, if anything. Like, if you think about the comics and Iron Lad and that whole deal, and you kind of, you in her own way, the way that her arc ended in her show could fit into a bigger story involving everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
With Mephisto.
The
Yeah.
Iron Lad angle too, which is a thing I didn't forget about, but forgot about in the context of this conversation until right now, makes the whole, like, not that they were going to go that route, but them, having a role in Kang Dynasty almost make more sense comic wise, maybe even have, like, I don't know what version of Kang they would have been fighting, but having some nod to, like, the Iron Lad connection in there would have been
Actually,
like,
I think
really
that's what it was.
fun.
It was a younger version. It was a younger
Yeah.
version of the character, according to Charles.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
I know. Like, it's like you think about it, and it's like, man, and it's so funny. In some ways, I really do feel like, and Jake said it last week, I really do think it's gonna course correct in a way that actually makes sense, and people will actually feel good about it. It's so funny.
It's not
I'm
people feel
sure-
good about it.
Yeah.
I think that people, if they stick the landing on this part, like in the same way with Endgame, like
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the hanging threads people care about because we're at a moment with no resolution. Like, I think people just move on, and other than, like, we won't probably move on because we're like sickos who care a lot about this stuff. But like, I don't know, like, I'm just not. It sucks that there are characters that I like that probably won't have a resolution to their stories, but also, like, it is a thing. There's a series with 40 movies and shows. It's like I only care about these characters getting left hanging if they don't do good by the other stuff that they're doing. Like, if Secret Wars ends up sticking the landing on this phase and the big stuff is all resolved, it's like, it might be in hindsight, like, it's really bad that they never got around to that, but I'm not gonna. The time's finite.
And also, I mean, that's another great point. You just brought up something that I really want to talk about, but I gotta save it for the end. But I gotta save it for the end. The part that I'm thinking about here is, and Hunter, let me know what you think about this in terms of what's a villain. Let's say they do this. Let's say they decide to do. I'll give you two options: TV villain or movie villain. Who would you be interested if this team that I have set out? Which movie villain would work, and which TV villain would you feel like would work if they decided to go that route?
Oy. I should have thought about this question before I came on this podcast. TV villain versus movie villain is such a funny way to phrase that.
It's very
Because,
different.
like,
It requires like
yeah.
different types of thinking. Yes.
Yeah. Because movie villain, right? Like, you can be like, oh, we're gonna do. I mean, now obviously we know he's coming back for the Vision TV show. But, like, I would have been like, this could have been a really interesting place to, like, somehow bring Ultron back or something like that. Which I stand by. And then TV villain, you end up with, to call back to the Defenders again, you go back to, like, Sigourney Weaver is here, but she's, like, playing a version of the Hand Leader that you've never heard of before because it's TV. And you're like, all right, great. Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I like Ultron, but I think ultimately you have to find someone who makes sense for that roster, right? Like you have to find someone who is somehow connected. And
Because I think before you
if
go, I
Riri's
say
if Riri's
TV
involved,
TV
I
for
think
me, I'd say Mephisto. TV for me is Mephisto.
that's exactly where I was going. I was going to say, you got to find someone that's connected to these characters. And in terms of story arcs that actually have like a forward trajectory with a big
Mhm.
bad villain that makes a lot of sense as a big bad villain, I think them in some way with Mephisto
Yeah,
makes sense.
and I think
That's
that
probably what I'm going with.
Mephisto is a very versatile villain because he's
Mhm.
not brute strength, and I think that for me, I think a way I would diverse like a difference I would say between a TV and a movie villain is I think a movie villain lends itself better to a brute strength villain, whereas like a TV show, you can't show someone fighting someone for 6 episodes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but I think if you want a villain to sustain 6 episodes, you need someone who can do indirect acts of villainy. You know what I mean? It's why like it's why in the Marvel Netflix shows, which were obviously so long, and that was the big problem with them, is
Mhm.
and a lot of times they broke them up in multiple villains. And I think the only villain that sustained, I think, successfully for 12 episodes was Kilgrave because he could do in so many different forms. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that there were so many ways to cinematicize, not a word, his villainy, right? And I think that Mephisto, obviously, like, yeah, man, the devil, you can make the devil the villain for 6+ episodes. And I think that that is like, I also think that there's something, even though they're not young, so that as we just established, I think that there is something very, I don't want to say biblical, but like it feels very true story wise to imagine like a group of young misfits coming together to fight a demonic evil. Like feels appropriate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't want old ass Tony Stark or old ass Bruce Banner to
Yeah.
fight the devil. Like I want people who like go to the adults. It's like the devil's here. It's like no, they're not. Like that. You want a scrappy young group of people doing that. I don't know why that feels right because it's not biblical. Because in the Bible, no one fights the devil. Really, except the archangel. But but it feels right to me. It's just like yeah, it's like honestly, you know what's it's like it's like it's a group of kids fighting a
Yes.
demonic evil.
I think that's a great point. That's a great point. And movie villain because I've been as I asked the question, I'm thinking of it myself, and I wonder what will work. I personally like. I do feel like you could do like it's almost like you wonder if they could do whether you decide to do not necessarily street level, but something. I don't know. It's kind of like Spider-Man and Tombstone in a way, where something like that. I feel something like that type of person fits into what their story could kind of fit into as opposed to an Avengers movie would require somebody like a nihilist or something like that. Like that's a different type of thing. But for the Young Avengers, I feel like a smaller scale for a movie, a smaller scale villain, I think would work in that context. And because I think just because it's not you have obviously the magic element of Billy, so it depends on
Yeah.
what on who you choose, and there's a kind of like a way that can work without it feeling like Billy's going to overpower somebody. But I think
Yeah.
there's a way to do it.
Well, I feel like there has to be stakes for all of
Mhm.
the characters involved,
Yep.
right? Like there's got to be like there can't be a character on the team who's just there because they're like,
Yeah,
well, I'm here. Like I feel like in order for you to care, and that's why I mean, even on the TV side of things, I mean,
yeah.
that's why Mephisto makes sense for me as well because every member of that team, if they don't already have a direct connection to like Mephisto or Magic or something, they're all a character who have maybe like lost someone they really care about or have experienced something where Mephisto could try to like offer them
Well,
a
you
deal
already got
or like
Riri. That's
they
like I
all
think that's why on the TV side, if
exactly
they decided to do
exactly
that, put Riri in there
yeah
and kind of continue her story that way and compromise her so the team is kind of compromised, it presents a very interesting conflict for the group.
And all these characters are somewhat underdogs because of their age,
Yes.
and so like you can imagine it's not actually hard to imagine a sympathetic way that they could get in the bed with the devil. Because once again, like the issue with a character like a Tony Stark type like any deal that with the devil Tony Stark can make, you'd be like, you're a piece of shit. Why are you doing that? Whereas like if America is doing it because she's like, I can punch my way through a million universes, I can't get back home. Well, like, well, I can understand that.
You know, in a world where we are allowed to kind of just go back and like pretend that phase 4 and 5 and 6 or whatever happened in a way that, you know, sets up our Magic Dream Champions movie. I actually do kind of feel like Kang does work for that movie version in a way that's better than like, that's part of the issue with, you know, the big complaint of him getting beaten by Ant-Man in Quantumania is they were like, oh, it doesn't feel like he'd be able to. Sure, but I feel like it is a lot more believable that like a group of Young Avengers or a group of champions are able to kind of come together and take down a version of Kang in some way, shape, or form. Like that does work to me in a way that is a lot more satisfying. And I think
and the problem repeats itself especially anyway. Again, so then it kind of allows, it would kind of be like a running gag or a running theme if that was the idea for the Young Avengers. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, and in a similar way to Mephisto, I think that Kang being this being who's sort of interdimensional, time travel-y, you know, he similarly could offer a lot of connections, deals, routes where like young people who suffered a lot of loss and trauma, you know, could see him as a method of like fixing some of that, or like finding ways to take that aspect of that character and add stakes to like all the members of the team.
I know. I think that's a great way to look at it. So now I wanna put this discussion here as we wind this part down. If I had to ask each of you, like your particular plan, what kind of story would you want to tell? Like what story do you feel like would work the best for this as an individual vehicle, taking the context of we only have the Cade and Kamala.
Can I give you an answer to like using the word story in terms of like a screenwriting sense? Because what the plot is, I don't know. I don't know. I want to tell the story. I think it needs to be a story about
character driven. Yes.
It needs to be a story about people who are a second generation of heroes growing up and being the first generation in a world that grew up with heroes. And that is a thing that we have not really seen explored in any comic book material. Other than Spider-Verse, you know, we have that. Like, I think that Miles Morales in Spider-Verse is the one example we have. But these characters who all have grown up in the shadow of either superheroes they admire, superheroes who are their parents, like different relationships they all have to superheroes. And I think in some ways feeling like the first generation of superheroes won't go away and that the past can't die, that we keep bringing back, you know, if we want to get metatextual with it. And I think that they need to have basically go on a venture of their own to find their own voice, to be told in a story like Hawkeye. Kate Bishop was introduced in a show with, you know, Clint Barton. Miss Marvel was introduced in a show. We're talking about how much she loves Captain Marvel. Her movie was her own Captain Marvel. You know, Tommy and Billy, their parents are two superheroes. Cassie, her dad is a superhero. You know, America Chavez was introduced helping Doctor Strange. Like, I think that to make the fact that all these characters were introduced through the lens of another hero, to make that subtext the text of the movie, make about like them finding a way to do something on their own. And I think that like either through a plot contrivance or through their own wish to basically be like, we're going to do something, we're going to prove that we can save the world on our own. And I think they think that what they want out of that is the recognition of that, of people being like, oh my God, you can save the world on their own. But at the end, as these stories always end, they don't necessarily get that recognition, but they realize that that's actually not what they're looking for. They're looking for the self-confidence that they can do it on their own. That's the story I want to be told.
I love that idea. I think that's great. How about you, Hunter?
I mean, I agree with a lot of what Jake just said. I especially like the part about like kind of legacy in that way not having been touched upon in the MCU in the way it's been so heavily focused on in stuff like the Spider-Man mythos and the comic books. I mean, especially in the comics, right? That was kind of the fun part of the Young Avengers when they were first introduced anyway. Like, that's why they were called like the Young Avengers, was because every member of that team was like a younger version of an existing famous Avenger. You know, I get like Eli Bradley, I know we're counting him out for a lot of reasons, but like young Captain America, you know, Wiccan is like kind of like young Thor and young Scarlet Witch, like young, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Iron Lad is young Iron Man, also young Vision. Like they even if they amalgamated them, they were all like these kind of like mantle passed down legacy characters, whether they asked
Right.
for it or not. And that has been beaten to death a lot in the comics in the last like decade, where they did it a little bit more on the nose, where it's like, okay, X-23 just becomes new Wolverine, Miles Morales is just new Spider-Man, there's a new Nova. Like, it's a little bit more straightforward where they just have the same names. But Young Avengers was kind of fun because they had their own identities, their own monikers for the most part, outside of like Kate Bishop being Hawkeye. But they were like legacies. They were all related to these existing heroes in some way, and I think that is a fun thing to play with. And I also do. I will always love an underdog story. It's like it is a backbone of storytelling and American cinema and the whole 9 yards. So I think that on top of everything Jake said, it goes without saying. I love the idea of it being a group of teenagers where it's like an Avengers level threat, as the MCU loves to say, as Jake Gyllenhaal loves to scream. Um, an Avengers level threat that normally they'd be like, a group
Right.
of teenagers could never do this, and then them proving that they can. I would love something like that. Also, I do think that those characters existing, I'm also a sucker for a story that deals with trauma. So I know I mentioned that word a couple times, but I would love a storyline that kind of, they're realizing, oh, I can do this, I have the satisfaction of doing this, and also, I'm realizing that I don't need to go into the past and fix these things that I perceive to be like things that are wrong with me. But I can forge my own path forward as my own version of this
I
hero.
think
I
the
love that
great
sort
thing
of thing as
about
well.
what you just said as far as the trauma thing, I would say with the exception of Kamala, each of them have some of those elements. Kate with her mom getting arrested and all
I
of the
mean, her
corruption.
dad. I mean, my thing with my
The
actual only
pops.
demand for
Yes.
champions is that in once in Hawkeye, they cast 4-time Tony nominee Brian Darcy James to play Derek Bishop. He's in one scene. That made me believe he's not dead. He can't be dead. They couldn't have. Come on, they couldn't have done that to him. He was announced. They had an announcement that he was going to play Derek Bishop. Bring him. Have him involved somehow.
Yeah, that I could see that.
Or
That's
I mean,
something
if
that could.
Mephisto, what's Kate's wish? My
Yeah.
mom's bad news, but my dad,
Yeah,
ev-
that's
everything was so
exactly
normal when
it.
dad was around. Mom was nice. Everything was so stable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, a sequence where Mephisto kind of
mhm,
teases all of the members of the
yeah.
team with like the loved ones that they've
Yeah.
lost, and he's like, "Here's your dad
And I'm
again."
like,
And
and
then Brian Darcy
I'm in the
James comes
theater, I'm
out and
hooting
gets
and
like
hollering, and
one more
people like,
scene.
what's going on? I'm
It's like, who is he?
One guy.
What is he
yeah,
talking about?
yeah. My
Theater's
guy,
dead
my
quiet. Jake's
guy.
in the
He's great. He was great in the spotlight.
back.
But no,
Oh man.
one last thought quickly.
Yeah,
New
sure.
Nova is new. Anyway, continue.
Jesus. Oh my god. Yeah. I think it's so much. Yeah, the trauma angle is such a good one. It's such an easy one too. Like I think once you have Riri kind of in there and a part of it all, that's kind of what I hope they do. That's really what I hope they do. Yeah.
I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I'm realizing that this is kind of just Thunderbolts. But I would, I would watch it
I
again.
think that yeah, I mean yes, it's a different version, but I think man, let me tell you the way Sacha Baron Cohen kind of cooked with that character, man. I just
Oh yeah,
I'm like very excited to see him back on the screen again in
Mhm.
some type of format dealing with some of the characters, and I feel like this would be the perfect vehicle for it. So we'll see what happens. As we wind the road and get to 2026 and Doomsday comes more into focus, there'll be a lot of more MCU vehicles to kind of see what happens, especially as I mentioned the Vision Quest show, and we'll see what happens with that as we get introduced to Tommy at some point, and maybe the Young Avengers story will build off of that, including Doomsday. So we will keep that there for the time being. Now, before we go, so I read this internet rumor yesterday, and the thing that I thought about it, and I'll read it in a second. I think the thing that initially came to mind to me when I read it was, this feels unbelievable. It really feels unbelievable, and it feels stupid, but it does feel like something that I feel like could eventually happen, just because somebody in the Marvel slash Sony world, one of them executives say, you know what, hey man, how do we get more toys?
Yeah.
So we've discussed previously, not too long ago, regarding Spider-Man Brand New Day and the symbiote stuff and Venom and whether that makes sense or not. And I thought Jake made a very compelling point as to why maybe you don't need to move into that story. Now, let me just read this rumor from at Redacted Spider, that redacted guy. Take it with a grain of salt. Post Secret Wars, Sony will revisit their spin off films and make more entries in the Venom franchise as well. Only this time it will be set in the actual MCU and will be an actual MCU production. Tom Hardy will not be returning as well. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I want to hear Jake first on this. Please.
So I don't like whatever. If they want to do that, they can do that. If they are agreeing to make it an MCU production, then I think then that makes me like less worried about the quality of the movie, because I think that, you know, there's just a level of competence that would provide.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not obviously I'm not that interested in a Venom movie at all after 3, but I'm simultaneously not interested in seeing how Venom fits into the MCU, because like who gives a shit. But I'm also slightly more interested in that than seeing what's going on with Null in the universe we just were in. Like that doesn't interest me at all. And so I don't know, like they can keep spinning their wheels. For me, that is firmly in a I'll believe they're doing it when I see a set photo. You know what I mean? Like they can, and like they very well might, but I'll say this: any Sony live action Spider-Man related production to me is in Star Wars territory, where it's like you can say that movie's gonna be made, but until I saw Ryan Gosling on that damn boat, I don't care how many times Sean Levy's talking about what he's doing. Until I saw him on that damn boat, I'm like, that movie's not happening. I mean it. Like, so until I see whoever's playing Eddie Brock in a motion capture suit, I'm like, fine. If you insist, Amy Pascal.
And Hunter, what do you think?
I'm so glad that you brought up the Ryan Gosling on the boat reference, because, like, honest to God, I had the same. I saw that picture drop and I was like, oh,
it really says everything you need to know about Hollywood.
This is like
it really says everything you know about Hollywood, that so many people have been attached. So many people who have made great work, mixed work. So many people have been attached to making another Spider-Man movie. And Sean Levy, who, by all accounts, the nicest guy in Hollywood, but he's the guy who gets the Spider-Man movie theater. Really goes to show that the how creativity is being valued in Hollywood, as opposed to just like, I'll get it in under budget.
Yeah, well, I kind of said it last time, but I'm gonna say it really plainly this time. Is like, I'm so sick of Venom at this point. Like, not necessarily Venom, but just this like this need to try to shoehorn the symbiote into like everything. And I think one of the worst things to ever happen to Spider-Man and his like me in media. And I know at this point Venom has taken on kind of his own thing, and hence like him getting his own movies instead of just like Venom will be the villain in every Spider-Man movie going forward. But like, that first Venom movie making as much money as it did,
it's messed things up.
Has just it's messed things up. It's messed things up, because let me tell you, I don't care about him. Not in this way. And like, it's not that I think he's bad or that I'm trying to like shit on that character at all. There's so many other things we could be doing that I would care about so much more. And similar to Jake, I really don't care about Null or any of the things they're trying to set up there. I think that's too much. I think that's too messy. I think that you have easy sets and spikes that you're skipping with the Young Avengers and Champions to try to like shoehorn in more time for a fourth Venom movie with a new actor. Like,
also the thing
to that point, I'm like,
the thing that worked with the Sony Venom movies, as such as they were, because I think the first one's not bad. I actually enjoyed the second one a decent amount. But the thing that worked, it's why the third one's so baffling to me, is because there's so much time spent on like how the symbiotes
Nothing
work
happened.
and the different type of symbiotes, and like Chiwetel Ejiofor, who I'm sure doesn't remember that he was in this movie, in an underground bunker talking very seriously about the symbiotes, and it's like the reason the
happened.
first one made $1 billion is because it's funny to listen to Tom Hardy call himself a pussy. That's what people liked about it. It's funny that the Venom has
It's
boobs
because
when it takes over
both-
Michelle Williams. Like that's why it made $1 billion.
Yeah. Yes, those first two Venom movies, and again, I'm not saying that I didn't really like
No,
the third
third
one,
one
but
is
I'm not
awful.
saying
No, it's 'cause
that
third one's
I
boring.
like hate that Venom.
Nothing happens in it.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Third one's boring. Also, like it's like was billed as the finale of this trilogy, and
I mean,
then
the moment
it
that
just
Michelle
didn't-
Williams was going to
I
be
don't know,
in
it
it,
was
you're like,
very
oh wait,
underwhelming.
the reason
but-
these movies work is because of that weird. The weird. It's actually not just the two of them; it is the three-way thing of
Yes.
Venom, Eddie,
Great
and her.
point. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, but the reason those first two movies work, in my opinion, is because they do feel like this weird, like those two
Yeah.
movies felt like
Yeah.
they should exist in like 2006, 2005, and like that was kind of fun when they came out. We were like, "Whoa, I feel like I'm watching
And
like
Tom
a
Hardy
Nicolas Cage
clearly
Ghost Rider
cares
movie.
way
Like,
more
this
than he
is-
should.
This is weird and absurd." Yeah, and that was fun, and I was like, you know, it is kind of cool that a comic book adaptation like this can still exist in the MCU times, and like that was fun for what it was. But then to try to take that and be like, great, now we're gonna do that 100 more times, but each time we do it, it's gonna feel a little bit more soulless, and we're gonna try to connect it to everything we possibly can. Like, I don't need all that. I think that the novelty of it kind of wore off really quick for me, and then I'm like, sure. But a lot of what I find interesting about this character, you've either already adapted, or I just like, I don't know, I just don't care as much anymore. As a lifelong Spider-Man nerd, the one thing where I'd be like, all right, maybe, is that, you know, Spider-Man 3 is still the only live action, you know, take we have on Spider-Man and Venom interacting with each other. But even then, I'm like, I'm so burnt out on this whole symbiote thing between the Venom movies and all the animated adaptations and, you know, Spider-Man 2, the video game, and like all of this stuff, that I'm almost like, I almost don't even need another movie where Spider-Man and Venom meet outside of like a Secret Wars type situation, because I'm like, I don't know, there's so many things we could be doing. I'm just going to keep going back to that point. There are 40 storylines in the MCU that don't have conclusions. And why are we trying to do Venom again without Tom Hardy? Like,
And now it feels like we're on a
it just
boom
feels like
time
an extra
of
thing.
different Spider-Man characters. Like the first thing that got me excited to think about a Sony Spider-Man universe is when on the last pod Charles Murphy floated the idea that they might want to introduce Mayday Parker to then be the lead of Sony Spider-Man movies, and I'm like, that's contrived, but that's exciting. That's interesting. Like, like that's an interesting character.
Yeah, I love Mayday Parker. Spider-Girl, I read all those comics growing up. I love Mayday Parker. That would be sick. And honestly, hot take, I think that the Donald Glover Hypno Hustler movie, I would have watched that. Of all the ones that they threw out there, I was kind of interested because I was like super like C-level character with an actually like interesting creative behind it where he can kind of adapt it however he wants, because let's be honest, no one cares about comic book Hypno Hustler, right? I'm like, that's actually kind of fun, but like outside of that concept, yeah, Mayday Parker, great, all the way. I don't.
Okay.
He's a villain, and his whole thing is that he's like a 1970s disco guy,
and
he
Donald Glover
uses
wants to play him
disco
because he
to,
has
like,
a weird
hypnotize
fetishization of
people,
Asian
and he's-
women, or what's the deal? I'm sorry. Oh, sorry.
How did I know that was coming?
What?
No, it was just like during that.
Wait,
How did I know that
I
was
didn't-
coming?
because
I didn't
AC,
know
we've
that
been doing this for almost a decade.
No comment.
Oh my god!
The joke
comment.
I've made a million times is there's a ticking time bomb going on right now, which is when Gen Z digs up Childish Gambino's first couple albums.
Hey man.
It's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like that's the thing that like we all know this detail about Donald
Yeah, exactly.
Glover,
And
we just
I
all
just think
didn't
it's so
read
funny to
through
bring
it
up.
and think of
Anyway,
it
sorry.
again.
No, it's all good.
No, that was outside of that. That was the end of my point. Is that I think that there are, if you want to keep doing this, like we're gonna make movies about Spider-Man side characters, I think that you can do a lot more interesting things with that IP than just like more Venom. And I know that, you know, people will bring up Venom has had a million different hosts at this point in the comics. So, you know, MCU Venom could be Matt Gargan, or like MCU Venom could be Flash Thompson. Not that, and again, to Jake's point of like how you're going to build that with certain actors and et cetera, et cetera. I get that. But all that aside, like, yes, you have all these hypothetical routes, but I
Okay.
just don't know if I care.
Okay.
And
Let me just
that's
say
what it
this.
comes
I
down to.
think if this happens to be true, I feel like this lacks so much ambition. This
Yes, that's
lacks
exactly it.
it's just so perfunctory.
That's exactly
I
it.
just there is a level of I don't need it. Like, okay, when I sit down at Thanksgiving and I'm ready to go eat the turkey, I'm ready to go eat the turkey. I love the sides. I love me some mac and cheese. Well, for me in this case now, vegan because of my lactose intolerance.
Yep.
But the mashed potatoes, stuffing,
Mhm.
love those sides. But I came for the turkey.
Yep.
That's what I'm here. That's why I'm here. I'm not here for these side vehicles. And Venom is no matter how much you want to look at the character and enjoy the character, I'm sorry, I don't give a shit about no big time Venom thing that's gonna last like a long time. Venom is there to cause problems for Spider-Man. That is it.
And
Doesn't
I
need to
feel
be
like,
anything
and I
else.
brought this up before, and I don't know
Yeah.
my comics history super well, but I feel like
Mhm.
so many of the aesthetics and so much of the vibe that the MCU Spider-Man has, and honestly, all the Spider-Man adaptations have. It's the reason why Venom works so poorly in the Sam Raimi movie is that
Yeah.
like the thing that's actually most interesting to portray with Spider-Man on screen is like 60s and 70s Spider-Man vibes, and then like the 90s like grungy Venom aesthetic. I feel like
Yeah.
it just feels so both the Venom and other 90s comic type things like that just feels so out of place now. Like it just feels like a really
It
like,
does.
and so
Yeah.
that's why I think the fact that Tom Hardy's take on it was like a dumb buddy cop, like that
Mhm.
worked because that's not. But like, I don't know how you do Venom in an opposition without like him just being like grossly like that vibe, and like that's not what the Spider-Man is.
My thing also on that
I,
is okay, so let's just string this out and they decide to all right, we're going to do some long-term storyline, which I totally don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And they decide to go the comics of the lethal protector vigilante route. Enough vigilante shit, man. You got that with Daredevil. It's over. It's already there. Like you don't need. You got the Daredevil, the Luke Cage Defenders things all
Mm-hmm.
over here. I do not need the Venom thing just because people are just obsessed with the symbiote thing. I
yeah.
don't. If you use Venom to me, Venom, Spider-Man, Venom versus Spider-Man, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You're done. You're cooked. It's a done deal. Beyond that, it doesn't. It to me, it's not going to work. And again, I think Hunter said it. The everything that they currently have going on to add this to the mix does not work at all. Not at all.
Also, like, who are you gonna if a big like Jake said, a big reason that those first two
Yeah.
Venom movies worked is Tom Hardy doing his bit or whatever. And it's like, and that's also if for the general audience, for like random people who are just going into the theater because they saw the first two Venom movies or whatever and really like them, how much are you gonna confuse them? Are you gonna alienate that audience? Like, who are you gonna get to
They
get people
already did
into the
that post,
theaters
like
to
you
like
said.
see this
They
movie?
did that post
Like,
credit scene at the Carnage joint.
People are completely out. I think that the reason why the first Venom movie made so much money is a couple things. One, because it's the same reason why Aquaman made so much money is because it's the blockbuster that like first and foremost was thinking about Asian audiences. Like with the lore, like the vibe, like it definitely was that was a huge part of it. But I also think that they tricked a lot of people in like kind of being cagey about whether or not it counted towards the MCU. And I think after No Way Home, people knew the jig was up and people like, no, we're not going to see the new one. And so like, I think it's just so insane to me how much money is spent on these movies when they don't have a reason why someone would go to see it. If you're making a movie that's like a good movie, that's like you're making a movie that's like a good quality movie, it's like absolutely, people are gonna see it because it's good. You can't go into a Venom movie like that though. You have to be like, why do people want to see this movie?
The great point. Great point. The why is just as important as anything else, and their why is we need to sell toys.
Yeah.
And like at that, I just don't think
yeah,
it's something that at this point, and even with it being an MCU production, they don't war it out. Nobody told Sony to just decide to do Venom without Spider-Man. They decided to do it. They went all in and did it. And now it's over. And now you want to go back? You want to go wear it out some more? Nah, man. I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm cool off that whole idea. Leave Tom Holland alone, man. Let him do his Spider-Man street level movies in peace.
We will always have Venom licking
Right,
the TV screen.
exactly. We will always have that. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I'm just saying it's not a good idea. Don't do it. You got too many things going on as it is. And make sure that Doomsday and Secret Wars are good ass movies. That's the most important thing that you should be worrying about at this time. And whatever you're deciding to do with the X-Men and your future properties in the current MCU, as opposed to doing not just Venom, but any other of these cockamamie ideas that Sony comes up with. Because I've had enough of Sony, man. Enough of their shit. Enough of this
It's just
shit, man.
I get it.
Wow.
Like I
I
get
don't
why
know
they're
why
doing this. I
Contemplate
get
It is.
feels really
because
Washington, but-
they want a franchise that they can call their own. Like they don't like the fact that they need the MCU in order to make the Spider-Man movies good. But like sometimes you just have to say sucks to suck. You should have made good Spider-Man movies on your own. Like
Yes, that's it.
and also like you have the Spider-Verse movies, which are really successful, and you know, obviously you want these animators to see their families and they haven't. So like you don't want to churn them out, but you want to be fair to the
Yeah.
animators. But it's like you have this property, you have like part of me is just like I don't know. I think that they are in an odd position that like this is their big IP, but the most successful parts of it they don't own. So, well, if I were them, I'd be like, just try to get another IP. Like, give up the ghost on this being your big thing. And I just don't think it's going to be their cash cow the way they want it to be.
Yes, and I feel like that's I feel like that's a good way to end. I don't want to see it that and just simply put, the MCU should be worrying about the MCU getting their own stuff together and own stuff right in the next 2 years, and making sure that Doomsday and Secret Wars go off without a hitch. Because if Doomsday don't work, then this don't work.
Yeah,
It's plain and simple. So that's it for today. That's it for tonight. I want to thank Hunter for joining us for this episode. This is a lot of fun as always, and I'm sure we'll have you back on very soon. Where can we find you, my friend?
You can find me at HRadesi14, HRADESI, the number 14, on all the social medias that I use. Honestly, mostly Instagram at this point. Whenever I'm working on
And
something
Jake,
fun,
sir.
I post
you
about
can
it.
follow
So
me on
follow me
Twitter
there.
at Jake Christie, on TikTok at the Jake Christie, and on Blue Sky at Jake Christie. Doing a lot of fun stuff on the show. I'm banking up some episodes for Museum at Twitter for my Christmas vacation. Got some fun guests coming in and some exciting stuff coming in 2026. I already have some people that are going to come on that are really exciting.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you can follow me on Twitter at AnthonyCanton_3. Follow the show on all platforms at MC University Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check that out. As I mentioned with the Patreon, we still got Batman and Robin to do. That's the last one in the series that we will be doing later this month. And we have a holiday themed subscriber mailbag that we'll be doing later this month. So we got some stuff in the hopper there on the Patreon, and we'll be keeping our eyes very keen on what happens with Avengers Doomsday and this teaser. And assuming that it comes on a day that works, we will get to it and we will talk about it, because we are looking forward to seeing what they have to offer in the alleged minute and 25 seconds. So with all that, trust us, we will find a way to do 25 minutes on 1 minute
Honestly,
and 25 seconds.
easy. That's light work for
Easy.
us.
Very, 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 very light work. So with that being said, for Hunter and Jake, I'm Anthony Canton III. This has been Marvel Cinematic University on the road to Doomsday, and we will talk to you next time.